I'll turn to coming up for air in a short while, but before I do, just let me briefly trace that pattern through the preceding works of fiction. In his debut novel, Burmese Days, the keynote is stasis. The timber merchant John Flory can't stand his vaguely dissolute expat life in Burma anymore, but he also can't face the prospect of a return to England. His only hope rests in the visiting young Englishwoman Elizabeth Lackestein, equally lacking in prospects, who soon compounds Flory's sense of futility. The final rejection of him resulting in suicide. I leave it to others to trace the ways in which Orwell's experience working the Indian police in Burma fed into Burmese Days. But that episode in his life is characterised by both Burma Crick and D.J. Taylor as a catalyst for personal and political revolt. I quote, 5 years as the servant of an oppressive system had left him with a bad conscience. As a result, he felt he had to escape, not just from imperialism, but from every form of man's dominion over man. It's worth noticing how Orwell gravitates towards atmospheres of extreme constraint in the two key essays that his time in Burma subsequently gave rise to, A Hanging and Shooting an Elephant. In A Hanging, 1931, the narrator describes in cool detail the inexorable process by which a Hindu prisoner is led out of his cage and walked across to the gallows to meet his end. In Shooting an Elephant, 1936, the police officer in the line who narrates the story heads off in pursuit of an elephant that has, yes, escaped, and comes face to face with his own powerlessness. Like his target, he too is cornered. I quote, "Suddenly, I realised that I should have to shoot the elephant after all. The people expected it of me, and I had got to do it. I could feel their 2,000 wills pressing me forward irresistibly. And it was at this moment, as I stood there with the rifle in my hands, that I first grasped the hollowness, the futility of the white man's dominion in the East. Here was I, the white man with his gun, standing in front of the unarmed native crowd, seemingly the leading actor of the piece. But in reality, I was only an absurd puppet, pushed to and fro by the will of those yellow faces behind me. I perceived in this moment that when the white man turns tyrant, it is his own freedom that he destroys." That final equation can seem very pat, of course, even implausible. It's a bit like suggesting that Shakespeare has something important to do, that no one has it tougher than the king, a line that sweeps a lot of the injustice of subjugation under the carpet. At the same time, though, we see Orwell dwelling on and drawing creative sustenance from a dichotomy between the natural world, in which elephants will grow wild when seized by an attack of must, and the imperialist machine on the other side, a man-made system which reduces its masters to the status of caged animals. In A Clergyman's Daughter, the unhappy heroine, Dorothy, drops out of society, suffering some form of psychosexual cataclysm. She flees the thankless servitude of life with her rector father and the unwanted attentions of a middle-aged local. And by degrees she gets lowered into the gutter, brushing through several of the locales that Orwell himself visited during his journalistic forays among the dispossessed. Trafalgar Square at night, scuzzy London lodgings, the hop fields of Kent. Degrading situations, yet eye-opening ones too. And when Dorothy is eventually rescued and brought back into the suffocating fold of Knight Hill, Suffolk, her father asks her what possessed her. I quote, "What made you take it into your head to run away like that?" he said. "I told you, father. I lost my memory." Said the rector. And Dorothy saw that he did not believe her, never would believe her, and that on many and many a future occasion, when he was in a less agreeable mood than at present, that escapade would be brought up against her. Escapade has the ring of a children's story about it. Dorothy's short-lived liberation from her old world will be belittled and boxed away by the very language used to describe it as a sort of reckless, foolhardy adventure. Orwell disowned Diogenes Daughter. Not a good bad novel, just a bad novel, in his opinion. And one reason why one might agree with him is that Dorothy's journey has an underlying aimlessness about it. That might be quite true to life. Indeed, the most nakedly true to life chapter in the book, the Trafalgar Square episode, is aimless to a fault, intent on capturing every detail going. It's one damned thing after another. Yes, Dorothy escapes, but she immediately lacks the wherewithal, financial and emotional, to escape to somewhere in particular. A series of things happen to her, and then she's back where she started. Quick quote, just outlining her passivity. Early on, she merely saw, as an animal sees, without speculation and almost without consciousness, the noises of the street, the confused din of voices, the hooting of horns, and the scream of the trams grinding on their gritty rails flowed through her head, provoking purely physical sensations, physical responses. She had no words, nor any conception of the purpose of such things as words, nor any consciousness of time or place, or of her own body, or even of her own existence. Who was she? She turned the question over in her mind and found that she had not the dimmest notion of who she was, except that, watching the people and horses passing, she grasped that she was a human being and not a horse. Just a little later on, one line, she had no plan, absolutely no plan whatever. In Orwell's two next novels, there is a far greater sense of an inner mission. The protagonists are actively striving to get away from it all and have an idea where they're headed. Gordon Comstock, this anti-social, anti-hero of Keep the Asterisk Replying, is obsessed with the idea of escaping the ghastly, go-getting world of wage slavery. Again and again, he plots the path to freedom via the rocky rubble of penury. I quote, he saw that now or never was the time to escape. He had to get out of it, out of the money world, irrevocably, before he was too far involved. Or again, somehow, sooner or later, he was going to escape from it, and so on. Orwell sustains a note of sour comedy at Comstock's expense, because the struggling artist is stuck. Occasionally, the blindingly obvious flashes before him. I quote, he grasps, as though it were a new discovery, that you do not escape from money, merely by being moneyless. On the contrary, you are the hopeless slave of money until you have enough of it to live on. For all his folly, Comstock's doomed one-man crusade against the forces of capitalism, determination to dodge the man-trap of marriage, have an impressive rigour to them. Comstock has a quasi-political programme, and he's prepared to lay down his life for it. His long-suffering girlfriend Rosemary observes that, I quote, it was not only from money but from life itself that he was turning away, and yet that death wish has a life force about it. Comstock decides in a fanciful, idealistic way to be sure that if he can cut loose from all conventional codes, then salvation awaits him on earth in the metropolis that sprawls around him. He can make a heaven of the urban Hades of London. Final quote. He wanted to go down, deep down, into some world where decency no longer mattered, to cut the strings of his self-respect, to submerge himself, to sink, as Rosemary had said. It was all bound up in his mind with the thought of being underground. He liked to think about the lost people, the underground people, the tramps, beggars, criminals, prostitutes. It's a good world that they inhabit down there in the frowsy kips and spikes. He liked to think that beneath the world of money there was that great sluttish underworld where failure and success have no meaning. It comforted him somehow to think of the smoke-dim slums of South London sprawling on and on, a huge, graceless wilderness where you could lose yourself forever.